Have you ever watched a war movie? Seen a soldier stride across the screen in slow motion, explosions blooming behind them, and thought, wow, what a noble, disciplined existence. Yeah, well, prepare to be disappointed. We tend to romanticize soldiers. We picture steely-eyed heroes, calm under fire, delivering inspiring speeches before charging into glory. But if you actually step inside a soldier's day, the reality is much weirder, way more boring, and frankly, a lot more about snacks than you'd think. Less action hero, more exhausted adult who hasn't slept properly in months. To understand what it's like to be a soldier, you first have to realize that war is not constant explosions. It's mostly waiting. In World War I, troops spent the overwhelming majority of their time not fighting, but holding trenches, rotating in and out, waiting for something to happen. Nobody films the 90% that's standing in mud at 4 a.m. wondering if the supply truck remembered the coffee. Let's start with the gear. Because of modern equipment, a soldier essentially becomes a human pack mule. By some estimates, troops in Afghanistan routinely carried loads well over 100 pounds on foot patrols. A soldier doesn't just walk, they waddle, carrying roughly their own body weight in stuff they were told not to lose. But this incredible preparation comes with a major downside. Nothing is ever comfortable. Imagine wearing your heaviest winter coat in summer while jogging forever. Between the blisters, the sweat, the gear digging into your shoulders, and the helmet that never sits right, being a soldier means being mildly miserable in 40 different ways simultaneously. No pause button. And speaking of misery, soldiers don't just train, they complain. It's practically a competitive sport. The British in World War I even had a mythical figure, Old Bill, the perpetually grumbling veteran who griped about everything. Sailors are known for cursing, but soldiers have turned complaining into folk poetry. Somewhere out there, a private is delivering a 5-minute monologue about a sandwich. Now think about that famous discipline. We assume soldiers are always serious because they stand so straight and salute so sharply. But that posture is mostly performance. A soldier looks exactly the same whether they're deeply focused or quietly daydreaming about a burger. It's the ultimate poker face. In reality, a soldier's daily routine revolves around 3 things: finding food, avoiding extra duties, and inventing elaborate ways to pass the time. They are the ultimate masters of boredom management. During the phony war of 1939-40, soldiers waited so long for combat that boredom itself became the enemy. Give a soldier a deck of cards, and they'll invent 6 new games before lunch. To a soldier, downtime is a precious resource, and civilians are those soft, lucky people who get to sleep in actual beds and complain about traffic. The logistics of being a soldier get even stranger at night. They still need sleep, but they also need someone awake watching. So how do they survive? They take shifts. Half the unit rests while the other half stays alert, then they switch. Imagine going to sleep knowing your turn to stare into the dark is in exactly 3 hours, every single night. It's a miracle they aren't all completely cranky. Honestly, 4 hours of sleep and they're still more functional than most people before their morning coffee. Civilians may see soldiers as fearless, but their own bodies see them as machines pushed past every reasonable limit. They march absurd distances. To a soldier, a hill isn't scenery, it's a personal insult. And socks become weirdly sacred. Trenchfoot disabled tens of thousands of World War I soldiers simply because their feet stayed wet, which is why armies became obsessed with dry socks. A well-prepared soldier guards their socks. An unprepared one learns painfully why. Units form deep, lifelong bonds. You might see your squad mates as family, rivals, or the people who will absolutely roast you for any mistake until the day you die. To them, the officers are a separate species, powerful, unpredictable, and capable of ruining a perfectly good afternoon with the word inspection. New recruits see veterans as terrifyingly calm. A veteran doesn't panic at a loud noise. They've heard it all, and mostly just want to know when lunch is. For many in the military, people fall into 2 categories: someone who shares their rations, or someone who eats the last one. There is no in-between. Back home, families imagine soldiers living dramatic, cinematic lives. They picture constant heroism. Most of the time, the soldier is just cleaning equipment that's already clean because someone important is visiting. They're not dodging bullets, they're folding things, with great precision. Generals may see soldiers as strategic pieces on a giant map, but to the soldier, those plans are just the reason they're awake before sunrise again. There's a reason troops everywhere coined the phrase, hurry up and wait, rush to a position, then sit there for hours. Centuries of military tradition, and it mostly produces forms to fill out and waiting to do. Soldiers have their own version of society. They're curious about the outside world, but increasingly baffled by it. Friends back home post vacation photos. The soldier responds from a tent. They speak a language so dense with acronyms that outsiders need a translator. They've built an entire culture out of inside jokes and shared suffering. Still, soldiers can be surprisingly mischievous, pulling pranks on the new guy purely for entertainment. Sending a rookie to fetch non-existent supplies like blinker fluid or a box of grid squares is a tradition older than most armies. That does not make them mean. It means they possess an overwhelming amount of energy and far too much free time, the dangerous combination. The cooks may have a very different view of soldiers. To a cook, a soldier is a bottomless pit that complains about the very food keeping it alive. Few things in military history are as universally mocked as the ration, and yet it always vanishes in minutes. To a soldier, the mess hall is the single most important building on Earth. Nice try, every other facility. Some soldiers recognize individual vehicles by sound alone. Some can tell who's coming before they appear. They may not know the grand strategy, but they know exactly when the food truck arrives. Now here's the strange part. Soldiers may understand the war less as politics and more as the situation they happen to be standing in. They learn the patterns. They learn that quiet days are suspicious. They learn which sergeant means business and which one is bluffing. They've got the system figured out completely. A soldier may not ask, what is the meaning of this conflict? They may ask, in their own way, will there be coffee, and can I sit down? That might be the most honest answer. To a soldier, the world strips down to the essentials: comfort, sleep, friends, food. And maybe that should humble us. We civilians assume our daily problems are enormous, our schedules sacred. But the soldier has learned that almost everything is survivable with the right boots and a good friend beside you. They're not living a movie. They're living dynamically, hour to hour, finding humor in the misery, riding out the boredom, and somehow keeping their spirits up. Every complaint, every card game, every shared ration, and every prank teaches us something. They're always telling us what kind of people they are, not with speeches, with attitude. And in the end, that may be the only language that really matters.